Everything that once seemed familiar turned out to be fragile as feathers. Those roaming packs of trenchcoat flapping goth kids and long-haired skater kids, and the endless seas of emos, they all vanished from the streets like smoke on the breeze. As the charred bricks of Edward's number 8 spiral wisps of smoke into the cold November sky of 2006. You know it's time, don't you? Those 2 deadly words roll like bullets in my fist. The end. So hello, you wonderful human of the internet, and welcome to the ending of the Nostalgia Project. I'm sorry, it's that time at last. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, the playlist for all these story times is linked below, or if you would simply like to go back and see them again, the playlist is always linked below. Basically, what I have been doing is writing a book this year of late 90s to early 2000s goth scene story times from back when I was a little baby bat getting into the scene and getting into a lot of trouble. And this has been what the book is about. And obviously books have word counts. Books have to reach an end somewhere. And for quite a while now, I've had you guys dropping me comments on Instagram saying, when are we going to get the written version? When are we going to get the written version? And the answer to that has been, I don't know. Don't hold your breath, because I have not had the time to edit through the beginning to get it all edited up, because I've been too busy writing new bits to read and to give you on here. And as a result, if I just keep going and keep going and keep going, A, it's not going to form a coherent book, and B, it's never going to be a book because I'm never going to get the time to do it. So I had to drop the guillotine somewhere, and this is where I dropped the guillotine. So I'll explain a bit more about this project and where it's going and what happens to you guys and what happens to this channel and all of that after this story. So I won't tell you much about this particular chapter other than to say I have told you bits of this story before many, many years back, but it was the final nail in the coffin of that era for me and for my friends and for Birmingham in general. It was the final nail in the coffin, and I've known for months now this is the perfect ending. This is where this era ends, and so it had to be the ending. And I knew when you get there, you're going to have to end it, and you're going to be really sad. And I did not want to end it here. I didn't at all. But like I say, I'll explain a bit more after this chapter. But without further ado, this chapter is called "The Roof is on Fire," aka Everything Dies. So here we go with the final chapter of the Nostalgia Project. The timeline is twisted like a pretzel, but you needed to know him first, before all this went down. Matt, I mean, and Gray, Ash, Jack, everyone who was there at the end. It was November, over a month before that disastrous New Year's Eve party, before Matt had ever stuck a needle in himself or anyone. We thought we were headed to just another night out, the most normal of normal, just Eddie's again. But any Birmingham goth old enough to know the scene can tell you precisely what the 11th of the 11th, 2006 actually meant. Don't Google it. It crept up on us all. It should creep up on you too. The place we're going has been the backdrop to this whole book, to all these stories, or near enough. The sacred ground on which Ash first tapped me on the shoulder, and I spun around to lay eyes on that shy, skinny, blonde-haired goth boy who would change my life forever, maybe save it, as he dumped his number in my hand, then fled like his fishnet was on fire. It was the first place I ever really danced with Luke, the place I first ever spoke to Matt, the smoky, mirrored dark club where I hung out as an underage sneak-in alongside Jason, the only goth boy at my school, while we were both just 15 years old and too awkward to exchange a single sentence. It was Edward's number 8, Birmingham's oldest, most seminal goth, rock and metal club. And that place was born to be a goth club. During the war, the old Victorian building had become a burns hospital, taking in the mutilated soldiers who had gone out to fight as starry-eyed youths, then returned nothing more than bleeding, screaming, decimated torsos. Their howls of agony soaked into the brickwork. Their battered corpses were shipped to the bottom floor of the building, where its very own morgue was housed. And then, decades later, as black and white seeged into colour photography, as music got darker, stranger, more sparse, that morgue became the Gallows Rock Pub, and that haunted burns hospital became Edward's number 8. Many people reported seeing ghosts in the club, the wandering souls of nurses or patients, and Eddie's staff members lingering after closing time rarely chose to do so alone. I never saw a ghost personally, but I was young back then. I didn't know that ghostly visitations generally come in forms so very different to the cliched vision of a woman in white floating down a darkened corridor. Ghosts come to me in the form of feelings, and Edward's had many, many feelings. That club had been my eldest brother's stomping ground while I was only 5 years old, just as it had been the stomping ground of every messed up, isolated weirdo kid for decades. Even Nirvana played there in their incesticide days. I saw Covenant there, Apoptygma Berserk. I double-dropped pills for the very first time in the Goth room. Spent half an hour locked in a bathroom stall watching the walls vibrate, playing Snake on my Nokia 3210, and feeling happier than maybe anyone has ever felt on this earth. My platform stripper boots had stomped every inch of that place, Ash's hand in mine usually. The heart-rendingly nostalgic synths of VMV Nation's Dark Angel lodged its vibrations in the walls, trickling out of cracks in the brickwork like the fumes of a million discordant memories, and sometimes they made you elated. Other times you looked around and saw all that had changed, all that you'd lost, and you felt more hopeless than you'd ever felt in your whole life. The place was undeniably haunted, and the hopelessness you sometimes felt there, you never quite knew if it was your own or the deathbed regret of some long-dead soldier burnt to a cinder. It smelled like clove smoke, cheap red wine, and the ozone blast of the fog machine. It smelled like Stronghold hairspray and the musky adrenaline odor of so many young bodies sweating inside leather and crushed velvet. To me, it smelled like Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab's Anubis perfume, sacred Egyptian embalming herbs corrupted with sweet red wine and heated club sweat. The walls were black, scrawled with monochrome graffiti, italic white words scrolling across the velvet booths to whisper, "The children of the night, what sweet music they make." Dracula's face, Pinhead's, Rob Zombie, they all leered down at you from the black and white walls, and yet no one ever noticed or appreciated how beautiful that club really was. You never do with the places that are true institutions. Eddie's had always been there, even before we were born. How could it ever not be there? Eddie's was indestructible, and we were young and stupid, and more than any of that, it opened its doors 3 nights a week, every week, till it became just Eddie's again. And as much as we loved it, as much as I loved the piled memories that swirled like mist around my boots as I swayed on the dance floor, we treated Eddie's like our parents' home, like the place we could always go, the place we utterly took for granted until it was too late. But that night, as normal as it seemed, it was like everyone in the city felt the gravitational pull. On some weird cellular level, every goth in Birmingham knew they needed to be there. Ash hadn't been to a goth club in months, not regularly in years. Not since getting fucked over by Ricky, then having to watch the guy become the local scene's DJ overlord. Now, of course, I was with Matt, and the animosity towards all my exes that he wore like a garland of brooding jealousy. Ash knew when he wasn't welcome, no matter how welcome he would always be to me. But that night, as Matt, Gray, and I queued towards the long black stairway into the club, the bass boom of the Goth room rattling the stars in the icy clear sky above our heads, I heard my name called out, and there he was, Ash in the flesh with Jack in tow, and then everything was perfect. I had all my favourite people together in one place at last, and even Matt's animosity seemed muted that night. I told you about Ash's parents, didn't I? The fact they were both psychic enough to save his life twice over, along with removing the bullets that otherwise would have taken out the lives of all his classmates. Well, I guess a little of that trickled down the family tree. Ash knew somewhere in his bones that he had to be there that night. And he wasn't the only one. The club was packed out, and everywhere I turned there were faces I hadn't seen in months, if not years. No one had arranged it. There was no special occasion, but people just knew. Like I said, you don't often see a ghost, but if you pay attention, you'll know when you've felt one. So Matt, Gray, and I got high, danced in every room of the club, usually with Jack and Ash in tow. We were all together on the Goth room stage, the DJ throwing in some Rob Zombie, when somehow a breakdance off got started between Matt and this other guy, and there it was, yet again, Matt absolutely trashing every goth rule and stereotype with this beautiful childlike glee as people backed into a circle and the two of them started spinning on their heads and all the rest. I didn't even know that Matt could breakdance, let alone that he was good at it in a really weirdly sexy way. But there you have it, another hidden depth, product of ADHD and those bizarre little things we pick up, learn, then tire of all within the same fortnight. Even Ash and Jack had to applaud as Matt and his new friend honourably called it a tie. Then everyone went back to swaying and stomping and thrusting their glow sticks about. The old and the new swirled together the way it always did at Eddie's, where every step you took, the ground was ankle deep in fog smoke and memories. Tonight, that hallowed ground came alive. It was the place where anything could happen. It's just unfortunate that that night anything really did. We were still in the Goth room at 1 a.m, Matt, Gray and me. Ash and Jack had gone down to the rock room as far as anyone knew. That was when I smelled the smoke for the first time. The cigarette ban hadn't come in yet, admittedly. A nightclub would be suspicious if it didn't smell like smoke. But this was wrong. Different. It wasn't a cigarette, nor even 1,000 cigarettes. The smell was acrid, charred, this black curling reek of something genuinely on fire. But I was high on E. I thought nothing of it. When your nose is autistic, it always catches weird scents half an hour before anyone else cottons on. You get so used to ignoring them. But 2 minutes later, this deafening alarm shattered the room. It was something none of us had ever heard in that place before. The music cut out almost immediately. The DJ told us to get out, get downstairs, but most people barely moved. This is England. British people don't like to be seen panicking over nothing, getting in a flap. No one else even seemed able to smell the smoke yet, but I could. I went to grab our coats from the DJ booth, and Matt held me back, told me to leave it. It was a false alarm, he insisted. They'd let us straight back in. I pointed out that I could literally smell something burning, and even if it was no big deal, the club closed in an hour anyway. They wouldn't bother reopening just for that. So I scooped up our coats, and as the reek of smoke got thicker, we moved towards the huddle of people waiting to get down the stairs. As we waited, the smoke became visible. Little wisps were creeping onto the dance floor now, thick, dark and reeking, from the men's toilets. Even so, we still thought it was nothing more than a flaming bog roll in a sink, something safe, contained, silly, a false alarm. Nightclub fires were something that happened to other people, not us, not here in soggy wet Britain. There was another door, an emergency exit that no one was fucking using, despite the fact there was an emergency alarm shrieking through the room right now. Like lambs to the slaughter, 100 or more Goths loitered, swigging snakebite and chatting as the queue trickled slowly, way too slowly, through the main door. It was nuts. I could smell the fucking smoke. I could see the smoke. But somehow I still felt mildly ridiculous as I shoved open that disused exit door and started down a cold, dark-painted flight of stairs none of us had ever seen before. Other people began following us down, overcoming their crippling British politeness now that we'd led the way. When Matt and I got outside, we realised Gray wasn't with us anymore. He really was like a cat when he was high. There was no herding him. The smoke was visible in the icy night sky now, right above our heads. We didn't know it yet, but that fire had started barely 7 meters from where we were standing, in the men's bathroom on the Goth floor, 3 flights up. Right about now, the DJ booth our coats had been lying in just minutes prior was being consumed by flame, the ancient wooden ceiling so old and dry it went up like kindling, smoke spiraling into the starry winter sky. In the chaos outside, people stumbled up and down John Bright Street, and Matt parked me by a car, telling me firmly to stay put, not move a muscle, no matter what, while he found Gray in the chaos. I nodded, agreed, and off he went, hood up, his expression like a neon sign warning, "I will kick the shit out of you if you even think about getting in my way." Matt, for all his flaws, was great in a crisis. A product of growing up in one of the roughest areas of Birmingham. People were leaping around like drunken savages, roaring, "The roof! The roof! The roof is on fire! We don't need no water, let the motherfucker burn!" I wanted to hit them. Who cared if they were joking? The roof was literally on fire, and this place could not burn down. How could the local scene exist if this place burned down? Was I more aware of what was happening than anyone else, or was it just the amphetamines in my bloodstream making me paranoid to an accurate degree? Matt found Gray, Ash and Jack found me. They were both coatless and shivering. Their stuff, like most people's, had been in the cloakroom, and there simply had not been enough time to get anything out of there as the building was evacuated. We'd gotten so lucky coming in with Gray, who was good friends with the DJ. Our coats were always allowed to stay heaped in the booth while he was around, and as such, I still have one of the most ridiculous coats I've ever owned. The cloakroom, however, had been chaos. One of the bouncers got punched by a fucking idiot who valued his coat more than the lives of everyone behind him. If we hadn't opened that emergency exit, made people realize there was another way out, a way that avoided the cloakroom crush, what the fuck would have happened? We'd all been 3 floors up, and right where the fire started, I truly believe that emergency exit saved our lives. Because the thing is, everyone made it out. The only casualty was a Goth room bartender who tried to extinguish the flames, treated for smoke inhalation. Not a single soul got burned, trampled, killed, and that would turn out to be nothing short of a miracle. In the weeks that followed, there was terrifying footage of a nightclub fire in Brazil, where people had panicked, run, jammed up the doors, then been cooked alive, screaming blue murder as they were crushed and immolated. It haunted my nightmares for weeks, that footage. How close we'd come to it being us. So if you hear an alarm in a big venue, don't run, don't push, but fucking move. To this day, I don't trust huge venues, and I doubt I will ever see a band like Rammstein, With the extreme pyrotechnics used in their shows, the risk, the horror, just isn't worth it to me. Been there once, not doing it again. But in that moment, still standing outside the club, no one really thought it was serious. The sirens came wailing through the night, fire engines pulling up, getting into position. Ash was bemoaning his coat. He'd got it in the sales last January, 500 quid cashmere marked down to 95. But at least he had the keys to his Audi and his house. Not everyone was so lucky. We said a quick goodbye, then Matt hustled me and Gray into a nearby taxi. I think it was the sirens that did it. Matt never liked lingering near sirens. As we huddled in the warm embrace of the back seat, the car pulled round the corner and we got the first sharp shock of what was to come. Flames and smoke were belching into the frozen sky. There was no way you could see the magnitude of it and deny that it looked serious. But even so, our ecstasy-fueled optimism persisted. They'd put it out somehow, surely. The club might be closed for a month, and that would suck. But it wouldn't be worse than that. Way. Bad things happen to other people, right? Not us. As the taxi swung onto the Aston Expressway, I delved in my tiny leather clubbing backpack and pulled out this postage stamp-sized piece of blotter paper enclosed in airtight plastic, cutting it open with my tiny pink penknife. If we were going home early, I figured it was finally time to eat this beast. I had a drug pen pal, see, this American guy I'd met on the Blue Light Forum, and after chatting for a while, we started sending each other care packages. The various illicit goods our respective countries specialised in. This thing, the blotter paper, it was meant to be a bog-standard, if strong, acid tab. But for some reason, I'd had a subconscious hunch from the moment I saw it that it might be worth treating with greater respect. That turned out to be a bloody good thing. When we got back to Gray's place, which was this sprawling apartment above a laundrette, his room on the top floor with a slanting roof and all this open space like a barn conversion, blankets and pillows thrown all over the floor for friends to crash and hang out, a Christmas tree already erected in one corner, I crouched down in front of the huge mirror we all used to get ready in and started redoing my makeup. Instantly, my legs started juddering underneath me, trembling with so much speed and force I nearly fell over. Matt was freaking out, yelling at me to stand up, lie down, something. You must be pinching a nerve. What the fuck? Aren't you in pain? I shook my head, carried on doing my makeup, my hand pressed hard against the mirror to keep it still as I shuddered all over. It's only the drugs kicking in, I told him. You ate that acid, he demanded. All of it. Yep, I said, still trying very hard not to lose an eye to the muscle convulsions running through my entire body, eyeliner clenched in trembling hand. I didn't know if it'd be strong, did I? Be a waste to share it and have neither of us feel anything. For the record, though, this does not feel like acid. It's more like I've eaten 3 more pills. I mean, I like it so far, but it's not acid. Matt considered this, watching me speculatively in the mirror. Then he stuck a hand in his pocket and stated, "If you're staying up on acid that might not even be acid, well, I'm eating more pills." He proceeded to eat not just 1, but 2, the kind of 2 a.m. stupidity that only I usually partook of. And as soon as they kicked in, Matt got twitchy, the way he always did on a come-up. There was a real disaster on hand, he informed us. We were running low on both Marlboros and on Airwaves black chewing gum. They were our only forms of fucking sustenance on nights like this. And more than that, they were essential to stop you chewing your face off while you were this high. Matt suggested we go to the 24-hour Tesco. Now, right now. No, Matt, Gray groaned. It's late, I'm high, let's just... Yeah, I agreed, sprawled flat on the blankets. I am definitely too high right now to go to fucking Tesco's. We have no Marlboros, Matt repeated for clarity. Do you really want no fags in the morning and to have to go down there on a come-down instead? Oh, fuck, Gray groaned, but it was a groan of consent. The idea was unthinkable. We could not wind up fagless on a come-down, then have to face the shops in the shivering morning cold, trying hard not to barf on the floor or pass out or any of the other fun side effects that start hitting you when you push Molly too far and she really starts to push back. I pulled a face, conceding, fine, but I am really starting to trip, so if I get too weird, you're bringing me straight back here, okay? Obviously, said Matt, shooting over to give me a hug. I'll look after you, whatever happens. Come on, coats, boots, move, people! He bounced off the walls, dance-pacing the room with a glow stick clutched in each fist, while Gray and I got our shoes and coats on. I was still in my favourite black rave pants, adorned with these glow-in-the-dark grommets and bondage straps, bundling my fluffy black coat over the top. We grabbed our clubbing bags and shushed each other as we descended the stairs from Gray's attic, past his dad's snores and down another flight into the laundry. It was always so creepy yet peaceful, that laundry after hours. A public place that stank of detergent and strangers to my autistic nose. A huge glass window that showed us off like pale, drugged-out mannequins to the world outside. This place that wasn't exactly Gray's, but wasn't exactly not either. The lighting was cold, harsh, slightly flickering. Matt's eyes were wide and black and glittering from all those extra pills, and he had his mission face back on. He was hypervigilant always, Matt, a result of having watched his shitbag dad knocking his mum about for years, till he'd finally gotten big enough and good enough at kickboxing to punch his old man's lights out himself. But the thing was, they all still lived together. Matt would always hold doors open by the back of one heel, leaving both fists and his strongest leg free to defend or attack, even when there was no conceivable threat. And when he was with me and Gray, who was a typically peaceful goth space case without a fighting bone in his body, Matt always knew he was the attack dog of the group. Whatever trouble we encountered wandering round that dodgy area at 3 a.m, he had to be the one to sort it out. Even if, frankly, Matt's reputation for being a gobby little shit meant that, in my opinion, any trouble we encountered would be better dealt with via a calm talking through from me, sole female and best arbitrator of the group, leaving Matt as the nuclear shock tactic if all else failed. But where Matt came from, you didn't use words. You just bit people's ears off. Literally. The November night had the biting scent of frost, a thin layer of it sparkling on the pavement. I had no idea how to get to Tesco from here, but the boys just led me into the unknown. As we walked, the unknown chemicals on that blotter tab melted into my brain, and the world morphed and sparkled, growing more beautiful, more impossible by the second. First it was the trees above our heads, those scant, lingering autumn leaves. I looked up and they were cradling the stars, glimmering with frost, black branches stark and haunting, and the stars beyond like the distant beacons of eternity. I couldn't gauge the distance between any of it. It felt like I should be able to reach up and run a finger over that nearest star. Would it feel like a diamond? Would it be cold the way it looked, or strangely warm like all the love in the universe? Come on, said Matt, laughing as he pulled me away from the tree I'd been staring up at, staring through for the past God knows how long. To this day, frosty winter trees hold a magic I can't even capture in words. The way they frame the night sky, the way they stop you from falling right off the earth and into that dazzling void. I never stopped seeing what I saw that night. Moments later, I stumbled to another halt, pressing myself close to a high metal cage fence on our left, the kind they put around schools. I clutched my fingers into the icy metal and stared in awe, laughing out loud at what lay beyond. 'Cause All around us, it was night, cold, clear, sparkling November night. But in there, beyond the bars of this fence, somehow, impossibly, sparkled a whole different world. It was daylight in there. The sun shone down on a paradise of palm trees and a calm, small oasis. The vision trembled, shifted, like I was peering through a silken veil at another world, and I kept glancing back at the night, then towards the cage again, but nothing would make the mirage vanish. There was another world in there. I was peeping through the closet into Narnia. I knew then that whatever I was on, well, it definitely wasn't acid. It wasn't anything I'd ever experienced or even heard of. Traditional hallucinogens make the world shift in strange but subtle ways, throwing geometric patterns across your vision, melting everything until the whole world goes full-on Salvador Dali, but they don't straight up make you see whole worlds that aren't there. Neither do traditional hallucinogens cause the muscle tremors I'd earlier experienced. This was a brand new drug, and despite not even knowing how long it might last or whether the peak was still to come, all I felt was sheer joyous wonder. "What are you looking at?" Matt asked. "What do you see?" His voice was yearning, almost frustrated. It drove him crazy when we weren't on the same chemical wavelength, when I'd left him behind, entering a dimension he couldn't access. "The palm trees," I breathed, turning to stare at him. "Don't you see the palm trees in there? Are they real?" "Palm trees," Gray repeated, laughing. "Are you kidding? That's my shitty old primary school." "What else?" Matt pushed, and I told him about the sunlight, the oasis. I could have stared for hours, but in the end they hustled me onwards over this brick railway bridge that seemed to climb and climb to the stars and back. 2 men were coming towards us, carrying a 6-pack of beer on each shoulder. Matt tossed out a cheery, "All ready for a good one, eh?" And they instantly stumbled to a halt, staring at each other in horrified paranoia, then demanding, "What? What's that?" "Beer," said Matt, with the smirk that declared he'd just run into a proper idiot, and was presently getting near orgasmic thrills from their panic as he decided just how far to push it. "Drinky, drinky, have a good one." "Are you looking for trouble?" one of them demanded. "We don't want trouble." "I'm telling you to enjoy your fucking beer, you numpty," said Matt, grinning from ear to ear. "Fucking psycho," muttered the taller, scruffier guy, and they hurried onwards over the bridge, with a flighty backwards glance at us. I had no idea if it was the rave pants, my dilated crackhead eyes, or Matt's extreme over-the-top jollity in the face of this freezing 3 a.m., but I later realised it was simply the culture. The dodgy end of Sutton is not the kind of place people stop and wave at each other on the street, or say a passing hello to a stranger, not even in the middle of the day, let alone now. By breaking this unspoken code at 3 a.m. of all times, Matt was pissing all over their front lawn in dog dominance terms. He'd just shown them he didn't give a fuck about anything. Them, us, living or dying, being stabbed to death on top of a railway bridge. He was either that high or just that Matt. He was still sniggering gleefully about it by the time we reached the brightly lit beacon of the Tesco garage, staffed by one lonesome lighthouse keeper locked away behind bars and plexiglass. A queue had formed already, and right in front of us was one lone, gangly, naive-looking kid, maybe 2 years younger. Matt, already tickled by that taste of reckless power, was off like a rocket of destruction, tapping him on the shoulder and informing him in his very best Kev impression, which, honestly, I came to suspect was almost certainly a throwback to who Matt had actually been before he found the goth scene. "Fucking police are looking for someone, mate. And I reckon it's you. You better do one." "What?" the kid stuttered. "I haven't done nothing." "Right over there," said Matt, stone cold, jabbing a thumb over his shoulder. "Cops in a car. So I suggest you fucking bounce before me crew get here and kick the shit right out of you. Because you're bringing this shite round my way and we're not having it, all right? I just need some beers, the kid spluttered, head whipping from the direction of the police to the darkened street ahead where Matt had subtly glanced when mentioning his so-called crew. He was practically hyperventilating, that poor kid, and I tried, Matt, just leave it, for fuck's sake. Turning to the kid, I added, look, ignore him. He's being a prat, that's all. Yeah, said Matt, with a smile that could murder. Maybe I am. He let the tension subside for half a second, the kid managing a watery smile. Then he added, maybe I'm not. They've all got blades, you know. It's the cops or your fucking guts on the floor, you little tosser. Fucking run. As the kid wobbled indecisively on the spot. Next, please, came the bored crackle from the speaker of Tesco's. Eyes popping out of his head, the kid shot forwards, fidgeting wildly while his beers were fetched. Then he ran off into the road, yelling, I don't want no trouble, man. I ain't done nothing. You are an absolute cunt, I scolded. But Matt was near enough rolling on the floor in hysterics by now, and Gray was either indifferent or simply too high to function. It was often hard to tell with Gray. Shaking my head, I let Matt handle the purchase of our cigarettes, the Airwaves Black, and my sacred banana milkshake for the morning. Then we turned back the way we'd come. When we reached Gray's room, I got so into watching patterns and magic dancing and blurring across the surface of this glowing egg-shaped rave toy, it frustrated Matt again. What are you watching it do? He whined over and over, and I couldn't even put it into words. That really blew his top. I was in another dimension. I'd left him again. So he ate even more pills. Soon after this, Gray's sister, who I'd never actually met before, came up with her boyfriend, this gangly emo kid, and Matt was so completely off it by then. He'd been fucking about with the music, with my enormous randomized playlist of everything from hardcore to EBM, future pop, gothabilly, even some rap, country and Oasis. And in there, he'd found Shooting Star, the ultimate anthem of every rave kid on earth. He pressed play and I just groaned. I was tripping now, far more than rolling. I wanted something like Colony 5, something full of bouncing sugar candy synths, hypnotic sand-shifting backbeats, something with weird, eloquent lyrics to make you think. I didn't want to leap around with glow sticks anymore, but that was where Matt was at, chemically speaking. I don't think he'd ever done so many pills in a single night before. So he grabbed his glow sticks, then got right up in the unfortunate emo kid's face, leaping manically around, then grabbing him by the hands, forcing him to take the glow sticks and yelling, his dilated black eyes and mad, gurning face inches from the boys, "Dance, monkey boy, dance!" The kid looked wigged as fuck. I was still sprawled out on the blankets, staring at my glowing, colour-shifting trip toy, and I tried telling the kid, just ignore him. It's like an interactive anti-drugs commercial up here. But honestly, I think the glimmering black gaze of my drugged-out psycho eyes and the vague tone you tend to get when you're tripping hard enough and you're autistic probably creeped him out even harder. Matt started up with the threats of violence if the monkey boy wouldn't dance, so the emo kid reluctantly, awkwardly accepted the glow sticks and waved them about a bit. Matt was finally satisfied, snatching them back and whirling them around like a goddamn hurricane. God, I wish they'd all just fuck off, frankly, apart from Gray, who was always so chill. He never bothered me while I was tripping. I just wanted music and weed and things to look at. Finally, the sister and her poor, tormented boyfriend escaped the madhouse, went down to their room. Matt came and sat down next to me, tried to strike up a conversation, but he was so high by now, he kept nodding out. You might be wondering how the fuck someone nods out on ecstasy, a stimulant, when it's something really associated with heroin, opiates, downers. But believe me, you can nod out on E2 in high enough doses, and it is the creepiest thing on earth to witness. You don't just fall asleep for a few seconds, head lolling forwards the way smackheads do. Instead, your eyes roll right back in your head and your whole face goes into spasm, gurning and chewing, while all that's visible is the whites of your wide, wide eyes. And sometimes your body's still trying to talk, so there's this guttural noise and incomprehensible gibberish groaning out of the eye-rolling, jaw-clenching zombie in front of you. All I could say was, Matt, it's a bloody good thing I'm good with hallucinogens, because your face is fucking terrifying right now. And it was, on both counts. Hallucinogens always distort faces, and when the face is already distorted, it is a freaking horror show. Gray could see things getting messy. Matt's fucked up zombie gurn show was getting so freaky, I was genuinely wondering how on earth I ever found the guy attractive. And between that and him ruining the tail end of my beautiful trip, I really, really started to genuinely detest the guy. Emotions on E, for me at least, tend to be absolutely polar. I'm either in bliss or I want to cut ties with someone permanently over almost nothing. Bedtime for this one, I think, Gray said, giving me a reassuring smile as he tried to shake Matt out of his latest zombie-eyed gurning semi-seizure. Matt snapped out of it, seemingly unaware it had ever happened, and Gray persuaded him to lie down and sleep, up here on the blankets, since the room we generally crashed in was occupied by the sister. Matt zonked out immediately, off in outer space. I kept the music playing, smoked some more weed, zoned out and tripped inside my mind for about an hour, until I was jolted from my trance by the door at the bottom of the attic stairs creaking open, and Gray's dad calling softly, "Hello? Anyone up there?" "Hi," I said back, my voice rasping with cigarettes and dehydration. Gray's asleep, but I'm not. I hoped he couldn't smell the weed. "Are you all back safe?" he asked. "All of you?" "Yeah, why? Is everything okay?" "Eddie's is on the news. It burned down last night." "What happened? Did you actually go there?" "On the news," I repeated, gobsmacked. "But it was only a little fire. We were there. The alarms went off at 1, but it really didn't seem like a big deal." "Well, I'm glad you're all safe. Sleep well." He was gone. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was my eldest brother saying, "Have you seen the fucking news? Eddie's burned to the ground last night." Burned to the fucking ground, I thought. What? I replied, telling him yes, I knew pretty damn well because I'd literally been there, but we never thought it was serious. The beeping of his "holy crap" response woke up Gray. I updated him and he immediately flicked the news onto his grainy little bedside TV. The story was still running. Birmingham Rock Music Institution destroyed by fire. Cause unknown. And the footage. It showed firemen up on cherry pickers, vast jets of water spurting into a towering inferno unrecognizable as any building on Earth. Except we all knew the layout like the backs of our own hands. We were looking at the Goth room. Right there, at the heart of the blaze. That was the Goth dance floor, the DJ booth. That was right where we'd all been standing the moment I smelled the smoke. The lurid flames faded into an image of a gutted, blackened shell. "Holy fuck," said Gray softly. "It's gone. It's really gone." Matt was up now, slipping his arm around my waist. "I don't believe it," he said, shaking his head. "I won't believe it unless I see it. We've got to go there right now. I want to see it. Those flames were not that bad, and Eddie's is Eddie's. We have to go and visit. It's like it's in hospital or something. We can't not visit." He was definitely still high, but he had a point. It was Eddie's, and none of it seemed real. Besides, we'd completely forgotten to buy any actual food on our late-night Tesco run, so we had to go out and face the hideous daylight-come-down world regardless. I scrambled back into last night's rave pants. Matt was still dressed, having essentially passed out. Then we grabbed cigarettes and water bottles and stumbled out into the cold grey morning, grumbling and swearing at everything, the way you do when you're half wired and half exhausted, half on the planet, half a baffled alien. Gray's truck was bright yellow in the morning gloom, its warm, smoke-smelling cab big enough for 3. Matt allowed me the passenger seats, taking up residence in the middle, and away we went. We hit the shops first. The shiny bright colours of the chocolate bars all danced and swirled in my lingering trippy vision. We grabbed sandwiches we knew we'd be wholly unable to eat until 8 p.m. at the earliest, no matter how hard we tried. Then we piled back into the truck, and Gray drove us to Eddie's, parking outside the Spearmint Rhino strip club, greyed out and tawdry in the light of day, bereft of its usual neon pink signage. The icy air bit through the thin, silky fabric of my rave pants as we walked up the familiar hill, except nothing was familiar. Not anymore. The remnants of Edward's number 8 were charcoal black, fenced off with police tape. And when you looked up towards the Goth room, all you could see were the warped, blackened skeleton bones of its original structure. The bricks were still smouldering even, acrid smoke creeping out of every crack. A few Goths milled around, but all were hushed, silently paying their respects, then "Shit," Gray blurted out, bounding over to the fire-warped door and picking up a froth-topped, half-empty pint of gloomy purple liquid from the ground beside it. "This is mine, my last ever Eddie's pint. I'm taking it home." He poured the grisly-looking, hours-old, fire-fried snake-bite and black onto the pavement and reverently wiped the glass clean with his sleeve, adding, "I'm keeping you forever." And, well, forever it would be. We all knew that now. The news had made it abundantly clear. The building was done for, gutted, unsafe for use. It would have to be bulldozed. Eddie's, the institution, it was gone, dead forever. That Victorian monolith full of ghosts and sinister artwork, museum of all our memories. Conspiracy theories began to fly wildly over the next few weeks. All the surrounding properties had been bought up for swanky flats and trendy restaurants in the past years. Eddie's and the Gallows pub had stood firm as the only bastions of that beautiful Victorian architecture and the alternative culture that used to rule this area. They'd refused and refused to be bought out. Then, out of nowhere, the whole building was suspiciously burned down. Forensic evidence would eventually point to a flaming toilet roll or newspaper hurled up into the ceiling of the men's bathroom. It was arson. But who and why? Maybe it was just a drunken prank gone wrong, but plenty of people offered up rewards for information. Not even the owners of Eddie's, but random goths and rockers who would give their life's fucking savings to smash in the face of the cunt what did it. But whoever they were, they left no trails behind. And doesn't that hint hard at a professional job? To do that completely unseen by anyone in such a packed-out club? The property was worth big money if they could only get it out of the goddamn way. "Come on," said Matt, taking a last mournful look at the smouldering wreckage. The news was true. It's properly dead. We'll never be back here. We plodded in silence back to Gray's yellow truck, Gray still cradling his sainted relic of a pint glass. As he started up the engine and we drew away, Matt turned on the radio. It was playing Green Day's Good Riddance, as though just for us, just for this moment. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. There were tears in every pair of ecstasy-hungover club kid eyes as the guitar and strings rang out, and Billy Joe Armstrong said goodbye to the love of his life, with no bitterness or not much, just memories and the yearning taste of youth passed by. I hope you had the time of your life. And the awful thing was, we had. Past tense. It was over now, all of it. Not that we knew it yet. But the truth is, I don't think any of us ever topped those years at and around Eddie's in the mid-2000s. With the pure MDA pills and packed out goth clubs of that era, the passionate DJs not yet turned sour and repetitive, the crowds not yet fading, the scene not yet dying. We were still young that day in Gray's truck. Our club kid home had burned to rubble, but the world hadn't turned. It hadn't left us behind. Not yet. But you can't outrun it. You certainly can't outlive it. The world turns on everyone in the end. When I broke up with Matt, he started stealing from my friends. Then he disappeared off the scene forever, rather than be man enough to apologise. Round about that time, the cartilage in his knees gave out, and my breakdancing, kickboxing, stock car racing pitbull boy suddenly had to walk along wincing with every step, leaning heavily on a stick. The doctors told him he'd be in a wheelchair by 27, and he'd be 36 now, Matt, if he's still alive. I can't picture him crippled for life. His physicality was everything to him. His hypervigilance, that constant need to defend himself and his friends from the entire world. How do you put that kind of person in a wheelchair? The dominoes went down, one by one. When Matt dumped the scene, he disappeared on Gray too, his best friend in the world, leaving Gray with absolutely no one. We were only 21, so much time left to make new friends, but Gray, he was closing in on 30. Losing Matt devastated him. The last anyone heard, he was still clinging to the fraying threads of the magic we'd shared so long ago. But it had all turned sour, gone so dark. Everything he did now, all the drugs, he did them alone. By day he washed windows, his ambition in life killed dead by his obsession with ecstasy, living for the weekend. So he worked a dead-end job to struggle through to every Friday night, then off out to any club that would have him, doing pills all by himself, trying to befriend kids half his age, the only people he still had anything in common with. But after Matt destroyed his trust, he never let them get close, not anymore. Gray stayed alone, even on E. And ecstasy, it isn't a drug you do alone. It just isn't. It makes you want to share experiences, talk and talk. Ecstasy alone, it feels all kinds of dirty, but Gray had nothing left to love in his life but that feeling, and now? Who knows? No one's seen him or heard from him in years. Did the drugs take him out in the end? I have a gut feeling the answer's too close for comfort. Because no one just disappears like that on the close-knit goth scene. Not unless it's really bad. As for Eddie's, it would find a new venue eventually, and for several beautiful years we had our home back. The street it was on was even called Goth Street. And if you've read my other book, The Putrescent Vein, the final story will take you there to meet the demi-fictional vampires who always seem to swirl up out of the smoke at that place for me. I wrote so many stories around the Goth Street venue, some of them scribbled directly down in notepads as I lurked in the 3 a.m. shadows of the goth room. But the world turns, and in 2015, that place was bulldozed too, with barely 24 hours notice, replaced with yet another generic fucking mainstream night, all the soul-ripped steam rolled out of it. Finally, Eddie's wound up at this venue we all knew was never going to work out. But the city was, they said, out of options. So we had to watch it die all over again. Not in that glorious plume of towering flame following the best night out anyone had had in years. No, Eddie's died like a chain smoker, wheezing on life support as its events were whittled from weekly to fortnightly to monthly to half empty, and the DJs spun the same tunes they'd been spinning for years on end, and no young faces ever turned up anymore, and now, just last week in fact, it closed its doors for good. Was COVID the reason, or just the excuse to finally lay that tortured ghost to rest? Like I said, the world turned. It left us behind, those children in black with their soot-stained fingers, soot-stained souls, survivors of the fire, memory bearers of the original venue, still haunting the city in rarer and rarer visitations, with no place left to call home and, just like Grey, not a soul to call a friend. The Oasis Goth Mall, where I went on my very first date with Ash, way back in that summer 2001 sunshine, that too was waning, echoing the demise of Camden Market, the London mecca to every goth kid the country over. Camden became a fake plastic tree, a tourist trap with nothing on sale but tacky, overpriced crap, and the goths there became tourist spectacles, not wide-eyed kids finding their home, finding themselves. The Oasis was even worse. It just died, taken over by cheap gold jewellery shops, phone hacking stations, all that typical market shite no one gives a fuck about. By 2014, you could walk in and be the only soul in that whole mausoleum of a mall. And the real irony is that if it had have just made it through to 2018, it would have boomed again. Because when Y2K goth got trendy, the out-of-date stylistics and dusty old velvet at the Oasis would have been so sought after. But it didn't. It couldn't. The final true goth shop to go was my beloved Anna B, run by an unforgettable wise woman with long black hair that finally turned witchy white before she packed it all in and headed God knows where. The world had turned. Everything that once seemed familiar turned out to be fragile as feathers. Those roaming packs of trenchcoat flapping goth kids and long-haired skater kids and the endless seas of emos, they all vanished from the streets like smoke on the breeze, until you realised you'd schlepped through the whole city and seen not one single person like you. Out of curiosity, you'd walk back a different way, eschew Moore Street for Snow Hill, and stroll home through Pigeon Park. There were always goths, skaters, weirdos in Pigeon Park, right? Clustered round the benches, side-eyeing the hot ones in other rival packs. But now, today, you realise there isn't a soul around that looks like you. It's just the normal folk now, the homeless people, the businessmen striding angrily through. The pigeons outlasted the kids. It's eerie today, in the cold, bright light of this strange new world. No breeze of clove smoke, no clunk and whir of skateboard wheels. But the weird thing is, I know you're still out there. I see you on the internet in greater numbers all the time. Alternative TikTok has literally billions of views. Goth TikTok isn't far behind. The kids are young and weird, maybe even weirder than we were. But like holograms, they only exist online. And forever comes the collective moan, the endless sighs of, I wish I could find my people. I wish my life had been like yours. Where are all the people like me? So you click on their profile, and they have tens of thousands of followers. There are their people, more of them than they even know what to do with. But to Gen Zers, internet folk aren't really real. So the hologram children of the 2020s find themselves alone together, these packed stadiums of kids in black, all ignoring each other to weep into the lens of their lit-up phone, standing shoulder to shoulder as they whisper in cracking voices, I'm so alone. And they aren't, of course. The weirdos of the world are less alone now than at any point in human history. They just have to find the balls to break the rules, all of them. And ironically, though their lives are about nothing but breaking the rules, in fashion, in gender, in sexuality, somehow they can't break the silly, flimsy rules of social media or society. They can't ask a fellow weirdo to come out for a coffee, or tap one on the shoulder in the street, strike up a conversation. They can't turn a fellow hologram into a living friend. But that, of course, was before the world fell off its axis completely. before the pandemic swept down, imprisoning us in our little electric boxes for well over a year, and the ones that were already alone, already suffering, they went completely insane. Cases of first-time psychosis and other serious mental illnesses shot through the roof. Gigs and clubs became unsafe. People became distrustful. A simple hug can kill you. And what the fuck am I meant to tell you to do in this new world? I don't know. This is a tome of the past, not a manual for your future, little fetus. And now, from here, you'll have to walk alone. As the charred bricks of Edward's number 8 spiral wisps of smoke into the cold November sky of 2006, you know it's time, don't you? Those 2 deadly words roll like bullets in my fist. The end. It's time to say goodbye. Time for this project to go dark. For you to be left with the same gut punch of loss and isolation we all felt that day. It was the end of an era, and this book just wanted to capture that era. 2 little eye-shaped windows into the messy, beautiful, chaotic world of Y2K baby bat existence. But now that's over, long gone, and so is this. I hope you had the time of your life. Don't be sad, little fetus, because you are still young. It's time to put down the book and make your own memories. Do the things that scare you. Fight the anxiety. Talk to a cool-looking stranger. Put your phone in your fucking pocket and get up there and dance. Who cares if you suck at it? I promise the kid going crazy on the dance floor all alone will always, always look cooler than the one hiding in the corner, scrolling tediously down their phone all night like they might as well have just stayed on the freaking couch. Be the party. Make real friends, not just online ones. Bring everything that died that night back to life in the way that only you, the young ones, still can. And just before we say goodbye, I'll leave you with one little secret. I'm only 21 as we stand here, hand in hand, watching the smoke billow. I didn't die that year, did I? I didn't even succumb to the 27 Club, much as I deserved to. And when you're not dead, well, things keep on happening, don't they? I still have more to tell you. More dark wooded tracks to lure you down, but it's different now. A different world. It belongs somewhere else. So, those 2 little bullets, those 2 fatal words, I won't fire them into your youthful skull. Not here, not now, as Eddie's smoulders behind us. Instead, I'll leave you with this. With the same 3 words that made our fetal souls dance in the 1980s at the end of Back to the Future. To be continued. So, yeah, that's the end of the Nostalgia Project. It is time for me to focus on editing it all up, throwing it at agents, throwing it at publishers, trying to get it out there. Because I do want to try and get this one traditionally published. Like, yes, I could throw it all together and self-publish it in about a month's time, but I don't want to do that if I don't have to. I do want to have a shot at traditionally publishing this one, so it's going to be a minute before you get to read the written version. However, as I've been going through editing, I have been writing extra chapters because there's just bits that I'm seeing now with the benefit of hindsight. I'm like, you missed that. That needs to go in there. That needs to go in there. So there will be a lot of fresh chapters. I don't know when I will read you guys those ones, whether I will do it before or after publication. Not sure. But as far as readings go, like say, I didn't die that year. Things carried on. And I do want to give you everything that came next, which is really the kind of crashing come down to the party. The years of realizing I couldn't do all of this stuff anymore. I was getting too old to do all of this stuff anymore. Not in terms of like, oh, you're too old for that, you should wear a longer skirt, and like expectations people have. I've never abided by those at all. I think wear what you want, do what you want at whatever age, but you find if you push your body this hard, this young, it flakes, and you can't do these things. Physically, you can't do these things anymore. And that was what hit me. And stopping doing the whole rave scene lifestyle was one of the most painful, gutting, long, awful things I've ever done in my life. And that's a whole thing, getting into worse drugs is a whole thing. Where life went with YouTube and stuff is a whole thing. There's a lot more to tell, but this really was a project about the kind of early 2000s goth scene and being a baby bat and all of that. And I feel like Eddie's burning to the ground, it really was like such an ending of an era. It just seemed the place to stop. And although I did not want to end this project here. I really didn't. I wrote out 2 previous endings before this one. Both of them were like, I'm not ready to stop this. I'm not ready. And I know you guys want more. So we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going. I couldn't know. I tried writing a chapter outline of like, okay, so what comes next then? I came up with fuck all because it doesn't belong in this project. It doesn't. So I had to rewrite it. I had to rewrite it again and again until eventually I was like, look, just write an ending. It's got to be an ending. Just write it. So I did. It's quite sad, but I've got a lot of editing to do and it has been kind of driving me a bit crazy. So I do need this project to go dark for a while just to give me the time to get the written version sorted and all the admin sorted and hopefully get it out there. And I'm really excited for that. I do really enjoy editing, writing and getting it right, and throwing in extra chapters is a added bonus for me that I'm really loving. So there's that. So as for the stories that are still to come, I don't know when those will begin. I don't know how frequent they will be. Like, obviously my absolute freaking dream would be to have like an agent or publisher go, yeah, here's an advance, like you can live on this for a while, you can just concentrate on this, but that's not reality. Like reality is that financially I have to live, so therefore I do have to split my time with YouTube and writing. I'm not going to vanish off the planet because I can't afford to. And I wouldn't want to anyway. I wouldn't want to. I love doing YouTube. There's so many subjects that come to mind that I just have to get out there with my opinionated ass. So although the project will be going dark, this channel will not be. If you have joined Patreon during this process, thank you so much. You have been so amazing. And I do hope you stick around for whatever comes next with the next book of writing, the next volume when that comes along. I am thinking live streaming also is something that I need to get sorted with Patreon, and maybe try and do that every now and then with you guys and just pop in and have a bit of a chat with some of you would be a nice thing to do. I feel like while this project is kind of going dark, and maybe we can kind of have a chat about some of the newer chapters that are in there and what's going on with those and all of that, and just get to know you guys who are on Patreon a little bit better. It's going to be like pretty clunky for a while because I don't have a decent camera I can live stream with just yet. I'm hoping to get one fairly soon, but initially it may be on a shoddy webcam with everything looking very, very like 2004, but that's okay. We can live with that for a while until I get a decent camera and learn how to use it. So yeah, there'll be various things going on with Patreon. So if you've joined, then I hope you stick around. If you don't, that's understandable. Like, you may have come for the story times, and obviously it will be a minute before maybe it'll be a minute before I get going with the next volume. But knowing me, I've loved writing this, and it's really kept me sane through the pandemic and through not having much of a social life right now. And Eddie's is pretty much dead. Eddie's did actually, when I wrote this, everything I said was true. Eddie's closed its doors forever. However, they had a final night and it was so popular that they have now decided they are going to think about running nights round about 3 times a year. So it may be that Eddie's is not actually dead. The other crazy thing to say is that I wrote all of this And Gray had really been on my mind. He'd really been on my mind. Like, what happened to him? I asked around about him years back. Nobody knew. He disappeared. I really thought the drugs had killed him. I really did. Like, I knew he'd gone down this dark path with them, kind of like I did. I thought they'd killed him. And then guess who sent me a friend request on Facebook yesterday? It was Gray. We haven't talked yet. I don't know where he's at. His profile picture was like from quite a long time back, I think. So I haven't even seen like how he's doing or what he's up to or anything today. Hopefully I get to chat to Gray again and see if he's around. And it sounds like he is around, and actually he's not dead, which is really good to hear, because it is very rare for people to disappear like that on the goth scene. And the last person I knew who really fell off the goth scene like that did turn out to be dead in a very, very tragic way. So I feared the same for Gray, and it seems like that's not true. So that's quite a bit of good news uptick as well. So yeah, who knows where, maybe even talking to him will bring up some more memories and where I want to go with things. But it's entirely possible that there won't be much of a pause before launching into the next volume. I do need to try and rein myself in and get some editing done with this and do the admin and make this the first priority. But I do need to create as well. I do need to create, and I love doing that. So the story times for the next volume, who knows when those will land? It may be surprisingly soon. So if you fancy popping onto Patreon for any of the things I've talked about, then you would be absolutely more than welcome. Eternal gratitude and all of that. And with all of that said, goodbye to the Nostalgia Project for now. A huge appreciation to everyone who has made writing this the weirdest, most amazing experience, because as I've said before, writing is usually such an isolating, lonely pastime, and no one shares in it with you until the whole thing is done, until you've written like 100,000, 200,000 words and edited them and gotten them out there. And it's such a long, slow, lonely process. And this one, you guys have been with me every step of the way, encouraging me, and it's been completely magical. So thank you all for that so much. And with that said, I'm going to shut up and go away now, and I will see you soon with something else, and soon after that with the next volume and where things went in a whole different way. So over and out.